Good morning, everybody. You haven't had your coffee yet. So my name is Lisa Schulteis. I'm going to be hosting this stage all morning. Things on the screen, so they're trying to get that settled, but we want to keep you on time today. So just a few announcements. The background noise off of the stage, so that'll help you hear better. For our Q&A, I'm going to come down because I can't see. For our Q&A, there is a QR code there for the Pigeonhole app, so you can scan that QR code. It's on this side. We'll pop it up as well. You can also go to pigeonhole.at and enter the code ESL London 2020, ESL London 24, all capital letters. That way, as you think of things, you can put questions in the app and we'll have those ready at the end for answering. This session can also be heard in another language. So if you go to the App Store, download the Interprify app, you can actually have closed captioning and put your headsets in or your AirPods or whatever you want to wear and listen to this in another language. So we're going to go ahead and get started, get caught up a little bit. Can we switch the main screen over? Yay, perfect. All right, first session. But today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about sustainable by design. And I wanted to do this in a little bit more of an interactive framework. You know, one of the things that I think we all can recognize is we talk about sustainability a lot, but we need to do a little bit more about sustainability. So I'm going to be talking through this, but there is going to be an interactive component to it. So for my fellow introverts in the room, I'm sorry to start you off that way this morning, but we'll make it easy and make it painless. So one of the first things that you have to do when you're talking about sustainability, obviously, is to know what your goals are, to know what your event sustainability goals are going to be. You'll hear these referred to as ESGs. And these are going to be very specific, measurable objectives. Things that after an event, we can measure to know whether or not they were successful. And we're going to integrate those across environmental, social, and governance principles. And so we want to be able to include those into our event planning. And we want to be able to address that environmental impact, promote that social equity, and really ensure those ethical governance principles. So here's a few examples for you. From an environmental impact, we really, maybe you want to reduce the carbon footprint through local sourcing, maybe waste minimization, other ways. From a social equity standpoint, maybe you want to enhance your inclusivity or enhance the accessibility of your attendees, right? The headsets are one example of that. The older I get, the worse my hearing gets, especially when there's background noise. So you want to maybe increase the accessibility of your attendees. And then from a governance perspective, really ensuring ethical vendor practices, ensuring ethical vendors. Those are all different ways that you can go ahead and increase your governance in terms of event sustainability goals. And with those metrics, one of the points that I make to people all the time, and this probably seems like a statement that you're like, well, yeah, duh, right? But different events have different carbon footprints. So if I'm holding, when we talk about statistics, you always hear, right, long haul travel is the worst when it comes to sustainability. Long haul travel is the worst. Well, it is for maybe an event like this. But if I'm holding private dinner meetings, long haul travel is probably not the worst, right? Those are probably all local attendees. What do you think is going to be the worst there? Probably food waste. So we have to consider when we're looking at different types of events that those metrics and those goals are going to be different across the board, and so are their carbon footprints. So you might be wondering if the events that you actually host or plan or are somehow involved in, if those types of events is actually going to get applied to in this talk today. And so I always show this slide. It's one of my favorite ones. Because when people think of events, a lot of times they think of conferences, they think of trade shows, they think of expos. But there's a lot of different types of meetings and events. We can have everything from hackathons and user events to quarterly meetings and sales and marketing meetings. So there's a lot of different type of events that we're all very involved in, but these goals are going to actually be able to be applied across the board. So what I'm going to ask you to do this morning is to decide on which one of your events you want to focus on today. So as we're going through these, what one event are you hosting or planning or somehow involved in that you're going to apply these principles to? Okay? So the first thing we want to do is we want to define your priorities, and we want to align your event with your event sustainability goals. So the first step is actually identifying the 10 R's of circularity. Now, some people may know what circularity is. Some people might be like, kind of know. So just real quick, when I grew up, I'm older than many in the room, we definitely lived in a linear economy. We still do, but it was really bad back then, right? So kind of that take, make, use, dispose, waste. We don't want to live in that anymore. We want to be in a circular economy where we take those raw materials, we design smartly, then we go ahead, move them into production, go ahead and move them into retail, have them consumed, then we reuse and repair them. Once they're no longer in the reuse and repair capabilities, let's go ahead, collect those. Let's figure out a way to recycle those. And guess what? Let's start all over and now design something new. So we want to move into that kind of circular economy with our events as well. And so one of the ways that we can do that is with the 10 R's. So I'm going to go through these quickly since we started a little bit late, but you guys can absolutely get my slides so you'll have these. So refuse, say no to unnecessary elements, right? Maybe that's printing or something else unsustainable. Rethink, you're going to innovate and redesign your process to prioritize sustainability in planning and execution. Reduce, minimize your resource consumption. That's a pretty easy one. Reuse, most people think of this one often. So we're going to incorporate those items that can be used multiple times, signage, decor, things like that. Repair is a pretty basic one to understand. We're going to fix those damaged things instead of buying something new. And then we get into some fun ones. We have refurbish. And so that's when we're going to update or restore older materials and make them functional and visually appealing again. We're going to remanufacture, so create new products using salvaged components. Repurpose, find creative new uses for materials. One of the really cool things I've seen is, at least in the US, they do a lot of the big hanging vinyl signs. They're horrible. But what they'll do is they'll repurpose those and make them into tote bags that are reusable, and then you've got something that's left over from the show and you can still use it for branding. Recycle, obviously, properly process and convert that waste. And recover, so capture value from waste through energy recovery or repurposing residual materials. So those are the 10 R's. Other people have other ones. We have a partner who is an aquarium, so their R is regeneration, right? They're trying to regenerate ecosystems for animals and beings. So when we look at these 10 R's, we want to take one of these 10 R's and start with that one. And then we're going to start incorporating that into our event design. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to start mapping our event life cycle out. So looking at our event life cycle, this is a sample one. This is one of mine. And we have different stages, right? So we start with our concept and initiation. We have our planning and design. And then we move into things like marketing and promotion, sourcing, on-site setup and move-in day. That's always my favorite day because I figure once we're on site, nothing matters anymore. We get to go. Then we have our actual on-site management, our breakdown, teardown, and our post-event follow-up. So this is one of my life cycles. but it may not be one of yours. You might have additional stages that you want to add in. You might have stages that you want to take off. So if you're doing a private dinner, for example, you might not have to worry about load in and move in. Bless you. That's the hard day. But you might have other ones that you want to add in. So map out what your event life cycle looks like, because now we're going to marry the two. So that final step is going to be integrating your event life cycle with those 10 R's. And the easiest way for me to do it is I take my cycle and I put it across the top of my screen, and then I take my 10 R's and I just make a matrix, right? Super simple. And then I start thinking during each of these different stages, what can I possibly do? How can I incorporate those 10 R's? So for example, here's some simple ones. For reuse, if I go look under planning, maybe I'm going to avoid adding event-specific dates on my printed materials. So now my banners that I used last year, I can use my banners this year, and I can use my banners next year because they don't have any dates on them. Maybe all the way down at teardown, I'm going to train my staff on how to handle those materials that we want to be able to reuse next year. And then once I have all those materials, what am I going to do with them? Well, now I have to be able to catalog those items and be able to store them. So that's an example for reuse. An example for refuse, maybe in the planning stages, I make the decision, there will be no single-use printed materials at my event. None. Then I have to actually, in the planning, work with my vendors and exhibitors and anybody else to say, guess what? There will be no single-use printing materials at our event. I need you to work with me to make that happen. And then if we go down to refurbish, maybe we can refurbish existing materials or decor that we have. If we move down to remanufacture, maybe use remanufactured furniture like tables and chairs. I love when they take old furniture and make it new. Most of the time it's stunning and it's more beautiful the second time around. So I want to be able to use those remanufactured items. All right. So those are just a few examples of things that I came up with. So what we're going to do, and this is where my introverts are going to be like, no, I'm going to run away, and that's usually me, is I want you to take a few minutes, and I want you to just take some notes. You can use it in your notes app on your phone. You can do it on paper and pencil if you're a paper and pencil person. If you don't like talking to people, you can do it by yourself. If you like talking to people, you can talk to the person next to you. But I want you to come up with, maybe take 3 of these planning stages and take 3 of these R's. And just come up with, make some notes of different things that you guys want to actually do to implement these goals. So I'm going to have you do this over the next couple of minutes. It's actually going to be quiet up on stage, which means you guys actually do have to work. And if you have questions or if you need some help with that, I'm willing to help out with that. But the first thing I want you to do is just even pick one. Pick one stage and one R and try to come up with some different things that you can do to implement. So let's take a few minutes to do that. Go ahead. And I am going to ask you to share too, just to forewarn you. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'm happy to come down and talk.
I don't know what it means. Yeah. Refuse. Oh, I see. Not refuse, like rubbish. Okay, right.
Yeah, that was really loud right by the speaker. That was actually a really good question because my US side sometimes doesn't match the side over here. So that first one is not refuse in terms of waste, it's refuse as in saying no. So just wanted to clarify that one. All right, I've given you guys a couple of minutes. Who wants to share? Somebody has to. Thank you. All right, so first, Anne, I want you to tell me what kind of event it is, and then just what stage it is and what your R was.
Hi, it's going to be an exhibition build, and at that planning stage, I think it's important to maybe select a charity partner that if you're doing an exhibition or building an exhibition in another country, that you select a charity partner that you're able to either repurpose or recycle that, some of the products or your props at the end of it. So that has the CSR component as well.
And I'm going to turn these on, or put these on so I can hear better. So that was great. Who else would like to share? I need 2 more people. There we go. So what type of an event, what stage, and what R?
I'm going to be very strange on the type of event, but I would say any. I can specify AGM if you want, but for me, refuse long haul flights. The planning is the venue search to make sure delegates are coming at non-flight distance if possible. Hybrid solution for presenters and for delegates to be able to join with, if possible, no flight at all. Yeah, and then after that, it goes along. I'm not going to carry on the whole way, but for me, it's a big deal. So it's any event.
Perfect. Yeah, you're right. It can be any event. And, you know, it's really nice because once you start thinking through these, the matrix gets a little bit easier to actually fill out once you start that process. All right, I need one more.
Hi, so I had an event which is a product launch for a tech company, and I was going to refuse to use any vinyl wrap for branding. So that was at the concept stage, I guess, was the refuse. And then you'd have to go through all the stages. Marketing would have to come up with different ideas to do the branding. You'd have to source suppliers to come up with alternatives, and so on.
Perfect. So I appreciate you all sharing those. And like I said, as you start working on this matrix, it's easier to fill those in, and it's easier to kind of continue making those event sustainability goals even bigger, because now you have a way to focus on that, and you have a way to really build on what you're already doing. All right, so let's go ahead and move on a little bit. So I don't know about you, but a lot of times I get my event sustainability goals put down. I get really excited because I'm like, I'm not going to accept this, right? Or I'm going to do this. And then I tell the stakeholder who may be involved, which is usually the client, and they fight back a little bit, right? Never happens, right? So we need to, once we get these down and done, we need to share this information and share these goals with our collaborators and our stakeholders. And we need to tell them why. So when it comes to our stakeholders, and stakeholders can be anybody. It can be the client, it can be the attendees, it can be the exhibitors, it could be the venue. Anybody who has a stake in your event, you need to communicate to them. So the first thing that I always do is I highlight any cost savings. Anytime I can tell them I'm saving them money, it's always a really good way to start my conversation. So I will highlight any cost savings first. I remind them about how supporting these sustainability goals is going to enhance their brand image. It's going to make them look better. Everybody has an ego. I will showcase at the end of the event any measurable impact. So work with your venues, work with your vendors to be able to find those metrics, to be able to share those post-event. And even with your team, I share all of this information with my team. I want them to be as excited as I am. So be sure to share that with your team. I tell them all the time, I'm like, these are going to align with your values, right? So I tell them, or I connect the sustainability efforts to their priorities. So I take whatever I'm doing and connect that to their priorities. Maybe they have a CSR goal, right? Maybe they have a corporate social responsibility goal. Maybe they have attendee expectations they're trying to meet. So I will align those goals. And then I present the long-term benefits to them as well. So be sure to communicate so that you're not working in a silo all by yourself. And you want to engage your attendees and your exhibitors through participation and commitment. Our exhibitors, we do a event sustainability partner pledge that we make them do. We don't make them do it. We ask them to do it very nicely and forcefully. And right now we have about a 75% conversion rate on that. Obviously, we're trying to get that going a little bit further, but we just started it 2 years ago and we're already at 75%. I think that's pretty good. Our attendees, we ask them simple things. Recycle your badges, unless if you're a freak like me who actually keeps every single badge on a hanger in her closet and has this collection from over the years, but they're not going in a landfill. So go ahead and ask them to recycle their badges. Again, if you don't have any dates or anything on those badges, you can use them for next year again, as long as you're using the same branding. So work with them to make sure that they're participating and that they're just as committed as you are. And then to close this out, what I'm going to do, this is going to feel very overwhelming, especially if you're starting out with that matrix on your own. But just start with one idea. Pick one stage, pick one R. Start with that one idea, implement that, and then go ahead and start working on the rest of that matrix. You don't have to fill it all in all at the beginning. Just start with one idea, because your journey starts here. And this is where you can go and start this journey and continue it and build it with your team to actually make an impact, so that we're not just talking about sustainability, but that we're actually doing something about sustainability. So I'm going to encourage you to connect with me. If you want access to the slides, I do also have worksheets that works you through all of those 10 R's, the different stages, things like that. You can go ahead, scan that QR code. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to answer any questions that there are related to this presentation or anything else related to sustainability. So let me switch screens here. I'm going to see if there are any questions. Jordan, can you see, are there any questions on the screen up there yet? Okay. This is my challenge of hosting and talking all at the same time. All right, so I'm not seeing anything on here, but if you have any questions, let me see. Yep. If you have any questions, feel free to grab me at the side of the stage. I will actually be here all day long too, so if you think of something later on, you're welcome to come back. I'm going to encourage you to come back in 10 minutes. We have Jordan who's going to be speaking here in 10 minutes, and so I encourage you to come back in 10 minutes. But other than that, thank you for your time this morning, and please enjoy the floor today during Event Sustainability Live. Thank you.